Okay, welcome back to part 2 of this series showing tips and tricks for controlling your neural DSP Quad Cortex with a Morningstar MIDI controller. Although, as stated before, some of these things are certainly applicable to any MIDI controller. But as you'll see today, I know I promised I'd be saving the more complicated stuff till later, but I thought today it might be fun to show something that I've seen get asked for a lot and is a little bit more complicated. So we're going to show 2 things today. I'm going to cover something very basic, which is just preset switching, but it does seem to trip a lot of people up. And then we're going to cover scene toggles in the sense of previous scene toggles. So I've seen a lot of requests on the Neural Discord. If you want to submit questions or whatever, please go there. I'm a moderator and I'm there pretty much all the time. But I've seen a lot of requests there and on the Unity forums for people asking for the ability to, when you hit a stomp, if you're in scene mode, say, and you hit a stomp a second time, you return back to the previous scene. So if I'm on scene A, I hit a stomp for scene B, and then I hit the stomp for scene B again, it takes me back to scene A. So you toggle back. Or if I was on scene H and I hit scene A, and then I hit scene H again, it goes back to A. So it's always that return back to the previous scene and kind of being able to toggle back and forth between that. So I'm going to show how to do that today. But let's start off with preset changes. And in the manual, I know this can be confusing. So I've kind of created a cheat sheet, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But there's a reason I'm on the very first factory preset in here, and I'm going to switch to the directory. So you'll see here that we have these set lists. I don't have many, but you can create more. So there are currently, at least on my QC, I have 4 set lists. You get factory presets. That counts as a set list. That's set list 0. You can kind of see it on the folder there. Hopefully you can make that out in the video. But if you look at your own QC, you'll see that it says 0. There's my presets, which is set list 1. And those are fixed. You can't change those. You can't delete those or do whatever. Those are pretty much just set out of the box. And then you can see down here, there's a new set list. So you can add additional set lists. I have one basically extra that I use for some music that I'm working on. Everything else kind of goes randomly into my presets. And then I've created one specifically for these MC8 videos just to keep those separate. Obviously, you can create many more, but that would include those first 2. The factory presets and my presets. You can see that I'm on preset 1. So I'm in setlist 0, bank 1, preset 1. And I think I'm gonna leave this in direct review for this discussion, and we'll watch things move there. So how do you determine what MIDI messages do you send to select setlist 0, bank 1, preset 1? If you look in the QC manual, you will see there's 3 messages. You don't always have to send 3. I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. But for the moment, for what I'm going to demonstrate today, I'm always going to send all 3. I'm going to be completely explicit in telling the QC what preset I want to go to. There are 3 values we need to send: CC32, CC0, and then a program change value. We can map those through the entire set list capability of the QC. And so I've kind of done that for you. I'm hoping this makes things really easy. So let's bring that up. I will share a link to this sheet in the video description. So this will be available for everyone. But I want to explain how this works, and then we're going to start I'm going to start selecting presets. So things will go a lot quicker once we get to that point. A lot of this is just understanding what these messages mean. So I do have a note up here if you hover over the title. Setlist 0 is factory presets. Setlist 1 is always my presets. 2+ are all user defined. And I only took this out through setlist 8. What you'll see is that there's a very distinct pattern here. And once you kind of get that pattern, it just repeats. The only thing that's going to change is CC32, which is essentially directly your set list selection. But the pattern for everything else is basically identical. So it doesn't matter if you're in setlist 0 or setlist 127. Once you kind of get this, I think you're going to be set. So the way you use this is you find your set list. Set list is this top row, right? So arrow pointing over here. So we're in set list 0, which is factory presets. I want to be in bank 1. I'm going to reselect the preset that we're on, basically, and preset 1A. So if I wanted bank 1, 1B, again, somewhat redundant, the preset name, this tells you you're in bank 1, tells you you're in bank 2. But you basically go here, you select the bank and the preset that you want, and you come across, right? So you're going down and over, and you're finding the column. Wow, note, go away. You're finding the column that it is. And it just so happens that setlist 0, bank 1, preset 1A is 0, 0, 0. So now we're going to come over to our editor. Now that we have those values, 0, 0, 0, let's go ahead and just put those in to the editor. So we'll just call it preset because it's just going to be generic. I'm just going to adjust this basic one. And I'm going to say on release, we're going to send a control change. And it's going to be CC number 32, CC value of 0. I have my QC on channel 4. Then we're going to add a CC number 0, value 0. We also need to switch this to our Quad Cortex. And then lastly, we're going to send that PC of 0. So on release, we're going to do program change, PC number 0, send all MIDI channels no, send to Quad Cortex. So let me bring this back up on the screen. We're in this column. We're essentially saying these three values, CC32, 0, CC 0, value of 0, and PC 0. And that's exactly what we've implemented here. CC32, CC 0, PC 0. So let's save that. And I can move, I'm just going to switch to a different bank here on the directory view. And if I hit my preset button, you see that we move right back up to factory presets and then preset 1. If I switch to a totally different directory, like my MC8 videos, and I again come over here and hit this, you see that we, in the directory, it takes us up to factory presets. So let's pick something else in here. Let's go to bank 12, and I want to go to 12D. Tight metal X. So I'm still in setlist 0. If we go back to our cheat sheet, I'm still in setlist 0, but I want to find bank 12. So I'm just going to scroll down, bank 12, and I said 12D. And so we can see here our values become 0, 0, 91. We only have to change the PC message, right? So let me bring these closer. 12, bank 12, right here, PC number 91. So let's go back to our MIDI editor, and I'm just going to change the PC value to 91. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's go all the way back to bank 1. Whoops. Well, that's fine. And now if I hit this button, we go to 12D, just like we would expect. And if I want to go to my MC8 video, well, I only have one in there from the last video, but let's say I want to go to that. So I know that that is setlist 3. So I'm going to come over to this column, and it's bank 1, 1A. So we'll go right back to the top. CC values for this, CC32 is 3. What you'll see is, like I said, CC32 is literally a direct mirror of the set list number you want. So that's the only thing that you need to change as you go out past 8 on this chart. In this case, it's 300. So let's just make sure that that actually works. It changes to 0. That's already 0. And I'm going to flip this back to 0. We're going to save that. I'm going to go somewhere totally whatever random in here, 24F in my factory presets. And I click this, and I'm right at that scroll and momentary playlist 3, bank 1, preset A. So hopefully that cheat sheet is useful. Like I said, I'm going to add a link. I think it just takes the mystery out. You know, like Battleship, right? You just pick a row and a column, and where they intersect, which preset you want to be in, wherever they intersect. So this is going to give you the values to get there. And then once you've done it a few times, you kind of get it. We'll talk more about preset changing in a later video, because there are some limitations right now with the Quad Cortex of moving preset up or preset down. And I have kind of a solution for that, but it's not great. That's for another video. So that's how you get around. That's how you send presets and change presets. So now let's talk about previous scene toggles. So going back to this preset, I'm just going to reuse and clear this. I think you need to double click that. Got to remember that. So let's just start with scene switching in general. If you're in scene mode, there are two ways you can do this. You can leverage literally just pressing a stomp. So enable bypass switch A is equivalent to, pressing that stomp physically. And we'll call this scene A. And save that. So now that's up on there. Let's actually switch to scene B. So I physically press the stomp. You can see that we're in scene B. If I press this, we're going to go back to scene A. And the reason that can be good and can be useful is because if I switch to stomp mode on here, I can stomp with that same. I don't need to reprogram. You can see the stomp toggling on the QC. So I can leverage that one assignment, CC35, to operate both stomps and scenes. In this case, I don't want to do that. And if you've watched my hybrid mode video, typically how you would do that is you would leave the QC in stomp mode and use these buttons as stomps, because there are direct MIDI messages to switch scenes without having to emulate pressing the actual stomp. So if we come back into our MIDI dictionary, you can see here there's a scene select, and that's CC43. If we apply that, this is also 0 indexed, kind of like the preset select stuff. So 0 being A, or the first scene. Since we want this to be scene A, I'm going to go ahead and apply that. If I switch to scene B over here and then come over on my MIDI controller, I go back to scene A. So that's working. And that works, right? If I go into stomp mode, I can hit scene A and I'll go back to it. I guess I should be in scene B here, go to stomp mode. I can switch to scene A and that comes off, even though I'm in stomp mode. So this is, regardless of mode, this is just saying change to this scene in the background. That's how you do the MIDI controlled hybrid, where you can have 8 stomps and 8 scenes, or however many buttons your MIDI controller has. So now we have a basic way to explicitly send a scene change. But if we want to toggle between 2 scenes, first we need to do a couple things. Hey everyone, Chuck from the future here. What I'm about to get into is something that I feel I probably overcomplicated and overexplained. So I'm throwing this in at the start to give a basic understanding of what's happening. It's probably still worth watching through the video at like 1.5x speed, because there are some additional operations that I'm not going to show in this portion that you need to do to resolve some potential issues, like not having toggles switch appropriately when you get there, but you'll see that further down in the video. I just want to do this now so that going into the next section, you already have an idea in your head of what's going to happen. So what we're doing here with this preset toggle is we need a place to store a variable that holds the value for a previous scene. So that's that little box up on the top. And then the potential values we can send for that are over on the left. 0 is A, 1 is B, 2 is C, so on. You just count up from 0 all the way out to H. So what's going to happen is you're going to press stomp A, let's say, to explicitly select that scene. And what happens there is, some of this will make sense later in the video, you're in position 1 because we're enabling toggle mode on our MIDI controller. So it's aware that it has 2 positions. It has the default position, the normal position, and the toggled position. So on release of pressing preset A, we're going to send CC43 value 0, because 0 equates to A, and our QC is going to switch to scene A. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to stomp foot switch B. And at the moment I press that, we're going to trigger an action called onDisengage from preset A, which is going to update that variable value, that previous scene value, to the value of 0, because 0 represents A. So now we have that stored and we can reference it later. When I release stomp B, I trigger my position 1, not toggled release action, and I send CC43 value 1 now, which corresponds to preset B, and the QC is going to change to scene B. If I stomp B again, when I release it this time, I'm going to use my position 2 toggle, which is going to send another CC43 value. It's sending another scene change, but where do we get the value from? And this is where we refer to that scroll counter. Again, this will make sense later in the video. And we pull the value, the current value of the scroll counter, which is set to 0 because our previous scene was A. And so we send that and our QC switches to scene A. If I were to stomp B again and take it off of toggle mode, I go back to my normal release message, position 1, and I again send CC43 value 1, which goes back to B. And I can keep toggling preset B to switch between A and B. That's what's going on. I hope that makes things more clear as you go forward. Sorry for the long, I talk about over-explaining. I'm over-explaining my over-explaining. But I hope this will help make the rest of the video clear. And basically, we need a place to store a variable, or the equivalent of a variable, meaning the last scene. And this is going to get complicated, so bear with me, guys. I'm a developer by trade, and I think if you're a developer, this make more sense, but we're going to store a variable. So the way we do that is leveraging the actions that the Morningstar controller uses. And again, there's going to be another video entirely on these actions explicitly. But for today, just bear with me. What we want to do here is leverage the onDisengage action, which is anytime you're on the current preset. So if I'm on A and I've pressed A, any other actions I do, like a long press, are still in the context of A. As long as I haven't pressed anything else, they all stay there. OnDisengage happens when I press a different button, meaning when I've left that preset. And in this case, when I leave this preset, I want to update essentially a variable. And to do that, we're going to use the counters. So that ends up being this CC value scroll. And I want to do update only. And the counter I want to use for this is counter A. Doesn't matter really which one you pick. You can pick any of them. I just know this one is empty right now. I'm not using it for something else. So when I leave this preset, I'm going to update counter A to be the value 0. Let me save this. If you look in the controller settings, right, you have these scroll counters. You can have a lot of them. So we're leveraging counter A down here. And you can see the start value. This is going to be irrelevant. These values here don't really matter because I'm going to be explicitly setting them. So when we leave A, I'm setting the value of that counter to the CC value that we used up here being 0. And so then I can pick that up. So I'm probably going to copy back and forth. This is getting deep. So this is going to be a long one. Strap in. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it to B just so we can show. So scene B, going to do the same thing here on release. So just pressing scene B, I want to switch to scene B, which is CC value 1. And then on disengage of B, I want to set that counter to match that CC value. I basically want to say when you move to the next preset, the value of the previous preset was B in this case, not A. Now I'm going to save this, and this isn't going to do anything other than swap scenes at this point, right? I press scene B, I get scene B. Press scene A, I get scene A. If I press scene A again, nothing happens other than me just explicitly telling the QC, go back to scene A or go back to scene B. Now I want to start implementing that toggle functionality. So if I'm on scene A and I press scene B, when I press scene B again, I want to go back to scene A. So let's implement this on scene B. I'm going to implement toggle mode. So I'm going to turn that on because I want to have different commands for different states. You can see this position here is what we're going to leverage. I want to switch position 1. So if I go through this position 1, position 2, shift position, again, there'll be a video on all of this, or position both, meaning regardless of the toggle state, maybe I want a long press action to always do the same thing, whether you're in toggle state 1 or toggle state 2. That's where you would leave it on both. I want my on disengage to absolutely happen on both. But I want this message to only happen on position 1. Meaning the default position, not the toggled position. That's position 1. Now I need to add some actions for position 2, which is where I'm going to toggle back to the previous scene. So in this case, position 2, I might have these backwards. So bear with me. I'm trying to do this from memory. And this is where I want to do a CC value scroll. And I don't want to update. So here you can like increase and send that counter. I'm pulling, this pulls the value from that counter. I want to send only the value of counter A to CC43. Boom. On MIDI channel 4. I know this is complicated. I don't want to lose you. I'm going to like really over explain this. CC43 is the value we use. So this message, this CC value scroll says, look at the value of this counter, only send it, don't change it to this CC number. And that's on position 2. So let's save this again and see where we're at. Let us switch to scene A via the MIDI controller. This is important. When you do this, you really need to do all your scene changes through the MIDI controller. Otherwise, that variable update in the counter, this action, will potentially get lost. Your MIDI controller is going to get confused. So I explicitly switch to scene A here. I switch to scene B. And now if I tap this again, it switches back to scene A. I did it. I did it right the first time. If I tap it again, it toggles back to scene B. Scene A was the last scene, the previous scene. So I can now toggle between those on a single foot switch. Now, what I want to do, maybe I want to know that I'm on the previous scene, or that I'm going to switch to the previous scene. So let's just call this previous scene, because we can have 2 names. So, all right, so this is inverted. This tells you what you're going to get when you press it. I switch to scene B. If I press it now, I go back to previous scene. And this button is now telling me, if you want to go back to scene B, press this button. I can go back to scene A. I can just press scene A again. That doesn't change anything. But I want to go back to scene B. And so I do. And pressing it again will take me to my previous scene, which is scene A. You can invert this. This is why I was saying if you invert these positions, so if I make that position 2 and that position 1, this may be a personal preference thing. This now tells you I'm on scene B and I'm on the previous scene. If that makes sense, right? Scene B, previous scene, back to scene B. So now it's telling you where you're at, not what it's going to do, not what pressing the button will do. My preference is typically the other way around. I want to see when I look at that button, I want to see what hitting it is going to do, not the state of it. So I'm going to do it this way. If you want it the other way, just invert these positions, or just invert the names up here. So now we can toggle back and forth. I'm going to add a few more things here, and I'm going to show you a problem, and then we're going to fix that problem. So let's copy scene B back to scene A now and update that. We need to make these value zeros. Or that one, value 0. That can stay the same. So now we should be able to toggle on A as well. So if we go to scene B, and then I go back to scene A, if I hit it again, it says previous scene, I go back to scene B. And if I'm on scene A, and I go to scene B. Yeah, see that didn't work. And now I'm back to scene A and scene B. Did I? Oh, yeah, I'm an idiot. Go back to scene A. This is why it's not working. I copy pasted and did not update that. So now I do scene A. We can toggle to scene B. If I do scene B, we toggle back to scene A. Now it's working as expected. And if I'm in that toggled state and I come back here, you can see that since that was in the previous scene state, right? It didn't switch correctly. So these are both previous scene, which means like when I hit scene A again, the previous scene is actually B. It doesn't switch. It literally goes previous scene. So this is kind of an issue. And if I go previous scene on B now, even though I'm on scene B, it's going to go back to A because that was the previous scene. And to get back to B, I have to essentially toggle it off and then come back and hit it again. And like nobody wants this. If you are in the toggle state and you leave, you sort of get into this weird cycle where I just pressed preset A, but it went to B, and I, need to press B again to get back to A. If you're watching what I'm pressing and what I'm hitting, you can see like this isn't working quickly. So there is a way to fix this. And we need to add one more command. And then once I do that, I'll copy this to a scene C and D and just kind of play around through that. I hope you're still with me. I know this is long. We need to add a additional on disengage message. And if we come down here to the device, it's this set toggle. And so on A, we want to disengage the toggle state explicitly. If it's not in the toggle state, if it's not in position 2, this does nothing. If it's in position 2, we explicitly set it back to position 1. And we want to do this on disengage. We want to do it when we leave preset A for any other preset. So we're doing 2 actions on disengage. We're setting our variable, essentially this counter variable, to the value of preset 0. So we're storing our previous position. And we're ensuring that this toggle state, this previous scene, position 2, goes back to position 1 explicitly when we leave. So I'm going to save that. I'm just going to do that by hand as well. I'm not going to copy this. So we want to do on disengage. We want to go down to device and set toggle disengage, this case for B, and save it. And now what we'll see is if I'm on scene B, right, and pressing the skin is taking me to the previous scene. So I'm in position 2. I'm in the toggle state. If I press scene A now, instead of that staying at previous scene, it flips back to scene B. So now when I hit scene B, it goes to scene B, and I can toggle. And if I go to scene A, it explicitly goes to scene A. It says previous scene. Before, when I would hit scene B, previous scene would stay. You can go back in the video and watch. And now it turns off. And so I know I'm going to get what I want when I press it. If I press it again, I toggle between those scenes. So this is a fully working implementation of previous scene toggle state. So let's copy this to 2 more, and I got to make sure I get the updates correct. Let's just do a quick test before I move on to scene D. But now I can press scene A. If I go to scene C, it goes there. If I go to previous scene, it should go to scene A, which it does. And then back. And so now, obviously, you could replicate this out for all the scenes you need to do. But for, let's say you're in hybrid mode and you only have 4 scenes running, this is going to give you that. So again, if I press scene A, it knows that scene D was the last actual scene. And if I'm on scene D explicitly and I go to B, B will go back to D. So now I have this sort of memory of the last, explicit scene change I went to. If I go to that, it's going to be B. If I hit D and go to A, and then hit A again and go back to D. I can toggle between this. All right. I know we got down a rabbit hole there, and I hope you were able to follow. But that's kind of a taste of things to come. When I talked about more complicated things, I figured I'd give you at least a taste of it now, along with something basic like just selecting a preset. Definitely more to come in the series. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do every week as a cadence, but I'm certainly going to try one a week. And if this is valuable, there's anything else you want to see, please go ahead, like and subscribe, all that usual banter. And I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you.